Hi everyone, welcome to the webinar. We will be starting within 2 minutes. Hi everyone, welcome to the webinar from Byte Academy and Nestria. Today we will have a deeper, look into the asynchronous JavaScript. We will try to understand what is that asynchronous JavaScript, what is synchronous JavaScript, what is the difference, how we can implement asynchronous JavaScript, and also the two methods that we use to achieve asynchronous JavaScript implementation. So before we go ahead, let me give you a little bit introduction about Nestria. Nestria is Byte Academy's sister company, and we have a Discord community. The link has been shared in the description box below. And if you find the link different than what you can see on the screen, don't worry. The link that has been shared on the description box will also drop you to the proper Discord server. All right. So you can also download the Discord application. And for that also the link has been provided in the description box. Okay. So yeah, that's what our Nestria is all about. And more insight about the Nestria and overview I will give after this event. Okay. And also the files, the resources I will be sharing, whatever I will be using in this particular workshop, I will be sharing those in the Nestria Discord server only. All right. So without further ado, let's jump into the topic and let's see what's the agenda for today. So first, as I said, we will look and try to understand what is synchronous JavaScript. Well, if anyone is familiar with JavaScript, then what we usually write the code, that's what synchronous JavaScript is all about. All right. But why we need to give an emphasis on the term synchronous? Because we are going to learn asynchronous JavaScript after that, right? So what's happening in the background, if we try to understand that first in the perspective of synchronous JavaScript, then only it will make much more sense when we will move on to the asynchronous JavaScript. Okay. So that's the first agenda. Next, we will going to look at Ajax, how to implement Ajax. And we will also going to look at Fetch API and how to implement Fetch API. All right. At a short note, Ajax and Fetch API are the two implementation of asynchronous JavaScript. These are the two different ways we can implement the asynchronous JavaScript. All right. And also we will be looking at the importance, right? Why there should be two different segments of or separate part of JavaScript need to be there. Why it's so important to have asynchronous JavaScript anyway, right? So we will going to look at all these things. Fine. Now, what I will do is I will stop share and I will be sharing some other screen. Okay. Just give me a second. So yeah, here we go. So basically this is the reference file that I will be using for today's session. Okay. And as I mentioned, I will be sharing the resource in the Nestria Discord server. Okay, so you can download the application and join our Discord server, and there you will find out lots of other materials as well. Anyway, I will going to give you some more insight after this session. So first of all, before even jumping into the Ajax, we will try to understand what's happening with the asynchronous JavaScript and why that is important, right? So first of all, when we visit some website, there are so many components of the website that gets loaded, right? When we visit some new website, let's say Google, Facebook, all right, let's say some other websites like Flipkart, Myntra, Amazon, whatever is the website, all right. Whenever you are visiting, you will see that lots of components gets loaded onto the page, right? Now, the JavaScript and the HTML that is responsible to perform this action is running behind, okay, behind the scene. We won't be able to understand, and obviously the code is written in a very efficient manner, right? For the websites like Facebook, the websites like Amazon, Myntra, all right? All these websites, they have written the background JavaScript code very efficiently, all right? And one more thing, it's not only about the JavaScript, the associated components, like one of the most important thing is the database, okay? So the database has been designed very, with a care and point in mind that a lot of data will be fetched every now and then, okay? Thousands and thousands and millions of data will be requested every now and then from those databases, right? So it's not only about the JavaScript, it's both. All the technologies working together in an efficient manner, all right? Otherwise, any technology we are not concentrating on will create a bottleneck in our application flow, all right? Okay, so let's come back to the JavaScript, synchronous JavaScript first. So when we write some JavaScript code, okay, one after the other, so the lines gets executed one by one, right? So let's take an example. Let's say I am doing a console log of, let's say 1, and then I'm writing a console log of 2, okay? Now, what happens when the interpreter will start to read this JavaScript code and put some output on the screen, okay? So it will read this line first, and it will print 1, and then it will read this line second, and it will going to print 2, right? So this step-by-step execution, one after the other. Let's have some another statement, let's say 3, all right, let's say 3, another statement, and let's include that in our flow. Let's say 3, okay. Now when the lines are getting executed one after the other, getting executed means they are giving output as well. They are not going behind the scene. So this will completely get executed, and then only the meaning one by one everything gets executed in the sense when this first line completely finished executing, then only it will come over here and update the run the second line. Until and unless it will do complete with the first line, it will never going to run to the second line. All right. Next, when it is done executing completely with the second line, then only it will come over here and run the third line. So here, can you see that there is a synchronization? The synchronization, what kind of synchronization? Like when this starts executing, when this is start and it is getting finished. When this is done, then only after this finishing, this start happens. And then it will execute till finish. Now over here, I have written just one line of code. You can imagine this as a function. and you might write 10, 20 lines of code inside. But the thing is, when one function will execute from start to end, then only the second one will start and finish, and then only the third one will start and finish. Next thing is, if let's say this has been started, this has ended, and after that this started, but some error appeared over here. Okay, if some error appeared over here, then the interpreter will immediately stop the code execution over here. It will never going to go forward, because error means what? Error means something has happened or some problem is occurred in the code, all right, in between the start and finish, right? So the code never reach till the end line or the finish line, right? It started, but somewhere in the middle, okay, when it was executed, let's say there are 100 lines of code in a function you have written, or let's say 50 lines of code. Let's say in the 27th line, there was some problem. So it never reached till the end, right? So that's why other part will never going to start until unless it is completely finished executing. And as we have encountered the error, obviously the interpreter will stop execution right over there at that 27th line. Okay. And then we, as a user or a programmer, not as a user, technically as a programmer, come to rescue at this 27th line, change the code which makes it work and makes it go from start to finish, and then only it will come and start the third line, right? Now over here, as this is running in a synchronous way, right, or they are in a sync, right, one start then finish, and then the next one starts and then reaches to the finishing point, then again starts and reaches to the finishing point, right? So this, as there is a synchronous approach is going on, we call this as a synchronous JavaScript, right? And one more thing to remember for the beginners, this is asked in the interviews many times, like whether JavaScript is synchronous or asynchronous. The answer should be JavaScript is synchronous by default. JavaScript is not asynchronous. JavaScript is synchronous by default, but we can make it behave like asynchronous with some specified functions and methods that are available. But JavaScript is a single-threaded synchronous language. Okay. So that's what was all about synchronous. What is the problem with synchronous? Let's try to understand that. And then we will understand why there was a importance to bring up the synchronous, right? And now, so imagine that there is a website. Let's come back to the example of the website. Now, if I remember properly, the website was Flipkart, right? If you visit Flipkart, okay, based on the structure that I've observed, they use single page application. Okay, they use the approach of single page application. All right, now let's not much focus on what is single page application. It's just a way or approach of designing a website, right? Now, what's important for us to understand here is the feature of single page application. All right, what's the feature? So you will see that we will focus on where we're supposed to focus. All right, there are so many features of single page application. Let's not get overwhelmed with all the other features. Okay, it will deviate us from the topic. So imagine, I will keep things simple. Let's say there is a list of product that's supposed to come over here. Okay, and again there should be another section where the list of products should appear. Fine. Okay. Now, if this is working in a synchronous part, now, one more thing, that these are the list of products that will appear. Apart from that, there is a nav bar. Okay, there is a navigation bar or nav bar, right? And there is a sidebar. Okay, there is a sidebar. And maybe there is a feature of, I don't know, let's say you can look at your card. Fine, you can look at your card. The card is visible. Okay. Just not practical, absolutely. Just some example. Okay, let's say this is some XYZ website that I want to design. Okay, let's not take the example of Flipkart directly, right? Some XYZ website that I have and where I have these many components. All right. Now, when I will visit this website, first of all, let's say the code is written as this. So this should be executing first. Okay, the product should come first. Then this product should come second. The sidebar should come third. And this, my cart, what are the products that I have, on my cart? That's supposed to come fourth. Fine. And I'm talking about this first, second, third, fourth is the synchronous JavaScript. So one section of code is written for this first, right? What I said as first, this one, right? This one is the first one. Then second section of code, then third section of code, then fourth section of code, right? Now, if you observe over here, until and unless this first part, let me change the color. Until and unless this first part means this part completely fetch the data from the backend, put all the products over here. Until and unless that happens, you won't be able to see any other thing. Not here, not sidebar, not cart. Nothing you will be able to see. Okay. Next, let's imagine this two, right? This is also this executed. This is also executing, right? So once this finish executing, then only the execution of the second code section of code will run, right? Synchronous JavaScript. So then only all the data fetching will happen for this section. All the products will be fetched for this section. And till then, you have to wait still for this sidebar and the cart. You cannot visit your cart before all these products gets rendered on the screen because the code is synchronous. It is written that way. Now imagine you have visited this page, okay, and on this sidebar, there will be some name of the products, just some names, okay, and here the details of the products appears, right? Now you can imagine that when someone is fetching the details of the products, that might be, like there will be a list of products with so many details, but here only the names, okay, just some XYZ website, right? Just for some example. Now the names are faster, the fetching the names are faster than fetching all the details, right? But we are fetching these names only after we are done fetching the details here, and then we will start with this, right? Synchronous JavaScript, as we know. But there is a problem. If someone visited this page, not to look only at these two, but quickly have a glance on cart or quickly have a glance on the sidebar, the product names only, in that case, it will be problematic, right? Until and unless all the details comes over here, we cannot move on to this part. Okay. And this, you cannot, visit the cart again. So it is problematic because the, user might, close the website, might not visit, okay, might visit, some other pages, right? And the company might lose business. Okay. So that's where, we need to leave this particular approach where everything will do, it will start and it will end, then the second one will start and end. We need to leave this approach over here, right? So that's where the asynchronous JavaScript comes into the picture. Fine. Now, what asynchronous JavaScript does, from the name itself, let me clear all this stuff. From the name itself, let's say there is a section of code over here. There is another section of code over here, and there is another section of code over here, right? This code takes some more time. This takes high time, this takes little higher time, and this takes less time. Okay. So when in asynchronous JavaScript, so when this will start executing, it doesn't mean that it won't come to the next line until the first one is completely executed. No. In asynchronous JavaScript, once this starts executing, immediately the interpreter comes to the second part, and all the internal things, registering this on the task scheduler and all those stuff. Let's not discuss about that. Okay. But just somehow JavaScript can track that this process has been initiated. It will, accordingly finish all the tasks. It, takes into account all the recordings, right? What are the tasks it has already, put into the queue, right? All those things, it takes care into. But the concept here is once this is started, it might take some more time, right? It might take 4 seconds. So it will not wait 4 seconds to get it finished. It will immediately start this task. Now this task might take only two seconds, right? So this task all quickly will happen. And maybe this task takes only 0.5 seconds, right? So what will going to happen? So this task, the first, second, and third, right? So first one will start. Okay, the first one maybe takes very long time, 4 seconds. Second one, immediately after that will start. It might take some 2 seconds, right? Some roughly time. And third one takes only 0.5 seconds. Okay, so we will have the output of first one at this point of time, output of second one at this point of time, and output of the third one at this point of time, right? So you see, we have the output of the third one because it takes less time to get executed. But this is the asynchronous approach. But what would have been the synchronous approach? Synchronous approach would have been like this. The first one takes 4 seconds. Once the first one done, then only the second one starts for 2 seconds. And then the third one, 0.5 seconds. All right, this is synchronous. This is asynchronous. And I hope you can understand why the asynchronous code will going to solve our problem in the website. Because in the website, maybe the first 2 section takes more time, but they will get initiated. Let them come. But immediately after that, these 2 sections, like the cart one on the left-hand side, this cart and this sidebar, both quickly have the data on them because they are very short sections and user can interact with the sections, right? And by the time this gets loaded, right? That is what, importance of asynchronous JavaScript came into the picture. And that's how asynchronous JavaScript solves some problem. All right. Now we will look at the 2 technologies, how we implement asynchronous JavaScript. Okay. So basically, in short, we implement asynchronous JavaScript in 2 ways. As far as the API calls are concerned, right? First is Ajax, and second one is Fetch API. All right. So what is Ajax? Basically, Ajax stands for asynchronous JavaScript and XML. Ajax loads the data from the server and updating the parts of a web page selectively without reloading the whole page, right? That's what Ajax can do. Okay, so in a single page application, without even loading the complete page, as I mentioned, like section of the pages will get rendered. They will make, request behind the scenes, right? So you can do that, and you can make asynchronous, calls to the APIs. That's how you do it, right? Now, Ajax behind the scene uses something called as XML HTTP request object that is built inside the browser. Fine. Now we will look at a small code, how this works. So first of all, this is, the body of the HTML where we can see this is the heading and there is a button. This button has, so by the way, this, class that you can see, it is inbuilt classes from Bootstrap. All right. So I have applied Bootstrap over here. So that's why these classes, but let's not worry about that. So this button, the main thing to notice over here, the ID is fetch btn. All right. So I am going to use this ID in my asynchronous Ajax code. Now, one more thing before we leave, look at the Ajax code. Ajax is slightly older technology, all right? In modern websites, we use fetching, right? And why I'm mentioning that right now, just look at the length of the code, okay? The amount of code you need to write to do, asynchronous API call, okay? So this is the code that we're supposed to write. First, we are fetching the button. Then we are adding an event listener that clicks. So if, as soon as you click on the button on the console, basically, finally what's happening on the console, the data will be fetched and printed onto the console. All right. So over here, if we look how it's working, so we have a function. So we're just printing on the screen. Then we are instantiating the X7 HTTP request object. Okay. Then we are making a GET request to this particular API. Okay. And fetching the first record, all right, as a JSON, right? True means it will going to work in asynchronous manner, because this might take some time, right? If it's a small data, less time, big data, more time it will take. I mean, like huge amount of data, it will going to take more time, right? So we're supposed to do it asynchronously without blocking any other code. Okay. And finally, if we look at over here, if the status is 200 successfully received the code, then we are going to do console log this.response text. Means in the response, we will going to have the text that has been fetched. Fine. Else, if something goes wrong, on the server side or somewhere in between, we are going to print something went wrong, right? Some error happened. Fine, and we are going to call the xhr.send, which will actually going to send the response. Now, this whole function, this whole function, the code, which is written inside the button click handler. So on click of the button, this will going to get called. We have passed the reference of the function over here. We are not executing. We can see this is the function name, and we have passed the reference of this function to this, button using this add event listener. Okay. So in simple words, when someone will click on this button, this function gets triggered. That's it. Right. Great. Now, when you do this, this will going to fetch the one record from this particular API and print it on the screen, right? That's what it is doing. Okay. Next, as I mentioned, the modern browsers, they use something called as fetch API. Okay. Instead of X7 HTTP request object. Fine. Now, what is fetch API? The fetch API is a promise-based API of JavaScript for making asynchronous HTTP request in the browser, similar to XML HTTP request, right? It is similar to XML HTTP request, but this fetch API is a modern approach. It will going to return you a promise, and promise is something which is part of the modern JavaScript, right? If you look at the code is absolutely same, the same button. Now, here I am going to show you how we can write, or how small the code will become with the fetch API. Now, if you are using fetch API will going to return your promise. Now, in the world of asynchronous JavaScript, when you have the promise, all right, or when it will return you the promise, it's just some sort of object. Instead of giving you the direct data, it will give you some sort of object, and you have to work on or write 2-3 extra lines of code on the top of that object. Okay, I'm just talking for the beginners who doesn't know what is the promise, right? Or doesn't have a clear, cut understanding. It's just a simple object it will going to return, on top of which you need to just mention one or two lines of code, and then in order to fetch the data from inside. It will not going to directly return you the data itself. Okay. Now let's see. Now this modern approach or fetch API approach will shorten out the code, right? Now to handle promise, there are two approaches you can take. Okay. One is the dot then and catch, and another one is the async of it, right? I'm going to show both of them, right? So the button is same, the code is same, the button is same. Nothing, no difference at all. When you're clicking on the button, first time I am just calling this function. Now you see how small this function is. You are just calling the fetch. Okay. Now over here, it is a small error, right? You're supposed to mention the API. It is mentioned as file. It's just a typo. So you're supposed to mention the API over here, okay? API URL. So when you will do that API URL, what will going to happen? That will going to return you a promise. Okay, so in this place of this particular API call, okay, again I'm mentioning it's just a small typo. You can mention the API address over there, right? Okay, so when you will be mentioning that over here, what will going to happen? This call, this fetch API call will going to return your promise. In order to handle the promise, I told you that 2-3 lines of code you just need to write. So you have to do .10. You have to attach .10. Okay, after that, right? What we have done over here. Now .then is for it will going to have the data. Okay, when things are successful. All right. So when we are attaching .10, we are passing one function inside. That's how this .10 works. Okay, this .10 will going to have an object, right? And from there we can write x.text. We are basically asking it to give us the text, right? Now one more thing is here also we are not going to directly get the data. Okay, so this particular part, this .10, when we are asking it to fetch me the text, this part will also not going to give me the direct data. It will again going to give me a promise. So as this is again going to give me promise, again I need to use a .10. So that's why I have used again a .10. Okay, and now this time when I'm calling a .10, this time it will not give me any other type of objects. It will going to give me direct data. Okay, and over here you can see it's a variable, it's an empty string. And over there, I'm just appending whatever data has been written, and I'm just doing a console log of it. Fine. That's how this, fetch API works. So much of longer code can be written in a shorter manner, right? A little bit more better approach, right? Not better approach, I would say. Well, it's kind of better approach and syntax both. Okay. From the development perspective, from the performance perspective, somewhere, okay, is using, async of it. All right. So the same code we have been written in terms of async of it, everything is the same. So you see here, first of all, the function that we are writing, like over here, function get data handler 1. So that we are writing in terms of, we have to make the function async, first of all. Okay, we have to write async behind that, right? After that, we know again the typo. It's not the file, but it's the data, the request API URL. We have to paste over there. Now, when we are making the request, again we know that this will going to return us a promise, right? We have seen over here it will going to return us a promise, this particular part. So we did what? .10, right? Now here we don't do .10. Whenever we are returning a promise, I can just write await over there and assign that to a variable. That's it. Now again, we know when we did this, it will going to return me a promise. So the promise goes over here, right? Now the when it will be resolved. So when this is getting returning the promise and this await is resolving this, it will going to give the ultimate object to x. Now again we are asking x.text, and just like this here, when asked for x.text, I mentioned that this will going to result again into a promise. We are not going to get direct text. So that's why we did .10. Similarly, if we come over here, same thing is happening. As soon as I did .text, it is again not going to give me the text directly. It will going to return me the promise. And as it is returning me promise, again I have to write await. Okay. And when this complete thing gets resolved, it will now going to give me the data, and the data will be assigned to y, right? And that's what I am doing, just appending the data into the data and entering the console. So that's how we implement asynchronous, JavaScript calls, okay, using fetch API and the XML HTTP object or AJAX, fine? Asynchronous JavaScript and XML, right? And for summary, fetch API is the modern approach. It is a promise-based approach, right? And promise-based approach, if you want to handle, either you can go for then, okay, then catch method. The catch I am not using. Catch is for catching some error. And over here, async await also you can use. Whichever is fine, you can go ahead with that method, right? And that's it for today's session. So this was about our asynchronous JavaScript, okay, and how it is used in our development, right? So yeah, thank you guys. And now what I will do before closing our session, I will give you a quick tour of our Nestria Discord server. Okay, so just allow me a second. All right, guys, thank you for the patience. Yeah, so this is our Nestria Discord server. All right, and you can see this event is going on right now on the YouTube, right? And you see we already the members of this community, okay, this Discord server have already got this event notification, right? So over here, if you join this server, you're also going to get notifications, and this kind of events keeps happening, right? And moreover, you will get so many channels like Python resources, where you can have different resources that will be shared by the uh, trainers. And there will be Python launch, where you can ask different questions about different topics, okay? And next, there is the data science resources, where the data science resources will be shared, right? Similarly, JavaScript resources are there, blockchain is there, right? There are some careers channels as well, okay, where you can ask the question related to your career, all right? So this is a community you can join and make use of it, right? So that's what about our today's event and our Nestria Discord community, all right? So thank you guys for joining us today. Just like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. Have a great day ahead.